Hi and hello. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm here to welcome you to yet another edition of the Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse, a strategic initiative. Uh, we are in for a fantastic and interesting conversation today around a theme that within industry today, whether it's in India or across the globe, has CXOs, leaders, and boardrooms scrambling to bring about efficiencies, outcomes, and value orientation. And to talk to me about all of this, please put your hands together to welcome Suhail Gulzar, Head of Solutions Engineering for Neo4j for India and Asia. Suhail, welcome. Absolutely brilliant to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Suhail, I'm directly going to jump into it. You see, one of the things that have been spoken over the last few decades has been how data is so important. And I think in many ways, organizations, enterprises, industries, and sectors have gone around collecting tons of data, immeasurable value residing in that data. However, would you agree that the conversations around how to connect those data, diverse and disparate data points and data sets, towards making sense, towards enterprise transformation, has only started happening over the last year or so? And if so, why do you think organizations and industry by and large is focusing on connected data today more than ever before?
First of all, that's such a great question, Arjun. I get to hear these questions and hear comments from industry leaders that I meet with, whether these are CXOs who are or the decision makers. A bit of a backdrop. I
Mhm.
remember some 17, 18 years back, I was helping one of the largest telecoms in India to build this largest databases where the idea was you need to analyze the data around who's calling who. And it was a at that point in time, it was a bit of a tough problem to solve. But
Yeah, indeed.
now, if I were to solve the same problem today, it's even harder. The reason being, back then, as an individual, I had a cell phone number, probably linked
Yes.
to an MIE number, probably linked to a subscriber ID. That was it. Those were just three attributes. That if I translate the same problem today that we are trying to solve, it's not just three attributes. There could be like hundreds of attributes. Now, imagine I'm trying to solve the same problem with the law enforcement agencies, trying to see who is communicating with who is talking to who. You're probably looking at a mesh of connected points, which
So
means
true.
I could be speaking with you on WhatsApp, but I may not be connected with you on LinkedIn.
Indeed.
Similarly, I could be connected with you on maybe on calls, but I might not be able to send you. So imagine if you look at it, a grand scheme of the things, you take a step back, it becomes a bigger connected problem. And solving these kind of challenges is actually something that industry leaders and the CXOs are trying to do. Take that example, move it from a telecom to a banking domain. Back
Indeed.
in the days, I remember the ways I can interact with the bank was either I go to an ATM or go to a bank, withdraw my money. But today we live in an omni-channel world wherein as an end user, I can communicate with the bank via bank, literally go to a branch, via an ATM, via my digital omni channels, which could be an app, which could be a web. And all of this eventually becomes connected. As if you were to look at how do I model Suhail as an enterprise, as a user of the bank, and
So true.
eventually do something about it. So all of this is just a connectivity problem. So you have to have some sort of a relationship which drives the eventual behavior, either from both sides, from Suhail as an user and also the enterprise that is basically providing me those services. So hence, as we progress, these connected use cases or connected problems are going to be more and more visible, not only in the banks, not only in the telecoms, but elsewhere as well. Pick an industry, whether it's telecom, automobile, or the insurance and all. Everywhere you'll actually see more and more attributes connected to each other. And one of the biggest challenges that we see today is the silos that
Indeed.
each enterprise has, and because of those silos, you end up having disparate data sources, which eventually becomes a kind of a meaningless in multiple cases. I hope that's
No, it
yeah.
did because I think quite interesting because I was thinking about my own bank, the one that I bank with. I'm not going to take any names, but they, for some strange reason, see me separately as a savings account holder or a customer. They see me separately as a credit card user with the same bank. They see me separately as a mutual fund user. They see me separately for my fixed deposits. I'm saying, why don't you talk to me as one single individual, which is Arjun Vishwanathan, who's got a slew of a portfolio with you? And I think that, interestingly and increasingly, Suhail, is what is going to help organizations kind of build out enterprise transformation by actually connecting data to make sense where it matters the most, which is what really brings me to my next question, which is we spoke about how organizations and business leaders have spent decades and so much sweat and blood and money on modernizing data platforms around speed, scale, cost efficiencies, and so on and so forth. Now, when you look at the industry as a whole today in its overall evolution, how do you see traditional table-centric data models evolving into more enterprise decision-making intelligent platforms?
Yeah, a great question. Regarding the previous example that you made, right? Your bank treating you as four entities through four
Indeed.
different channels, right? One of the things where I have seen, and I've kind of personally worked on some of these projects, is it was the phase wise approach, where in the one was collect all the data sources together, bring it into a bit of a data lake, and then we'll try to make sense out of it. What we're seeing is, yes, I got a data from multiple source systems, from multiple BUs, whether it's marketing, sales, or the customer acquisition.
Of
Now,
course.
what will happen as a part of this, as a part of the data modernization, is uh, tabular datas will continue. Tabular, databases will continue to evolve. But on top of it, what we are seeing is there's a new evolution that is kind of happening. Is we are complementing these large databases, large data warehouses, whether they are running on a cloud or on a data lake, self-managed. We are seeing an augmentation wherein enterprises themselves are coming to us saying, "Look, I got this large, transactional data, and I want to make sense out of it without having to really spend enormous hours, enormous amount of hours from both from analyst standpoint, also from a data science standpoint."
Of
So
course.
what they are now doing is they want to model all of this data into a connected data, so that it becomes easier for the analysts, rather than going through the tons and tons of data and churning through tons and tons of report, to just have a visualization of this data at the grand scheme of things. And then they can dial down and drill down into each individual, let's say, cluster of users or cluster of attributes. So that's what we are seeing. It's becoming more of an augmented conversation, rather than let's do something about it. That's what we are evolving into as an industry.
No, it's very interesting that you say that because let's also, when you look at augmentation, I'm assuming a very significant layer of artificial intelligence does kind of come in through, and therefore let's look at addressing that elephant in the room, which is to say that, look, the whole concept of, and what you were speaking about, disparate sets of data trying to talk to each other, is what back in the day I think we used to call RDBMS, or relational database management systems. Now that's obviously taken on different hues and shapes today, but increasingly, Sohail, as you infuse layers of AI into augmenting the disparate and very diverse and expansive data sets that you have, how does this new method or the format of connected data kind of help augment the very trustworthiness of what it brings to the data in terms of context? Because your impact is on revenue, it's on customers, it's on regulatory aspects. I mean, the ramifications are immense.
Oh, 100%. I was actually, so the reason why I was smiling when you asked this, I was at a bank today. We had this, one of the largest banks here. We did this, there's this event wherein they wanted to understand how they can leverage Gen AI and the
Uh,
AIs on the connected data. And the moment we went through this journey, like, this is how banks should adopt, or how banks should leverage their own data in the ways where it could be more meaningful. And non-technical users who really cannot
Very
write
true.
queries, they could potentially go to their database and literally talk to that database saying, "Hey, database, give me all the insights from a particular, I want to know who Suhail is." Now imagine if you have Suhail as an entity within your database, which is not connected to the other Suhails, which is basically my other profile, the context, you get a very vague context. So
Indeed, you do.
you're, and what happens as a part of that is your models or your analytical models or the machine learning model that you're running on, they give you a very vague set of output which may or may not be useful to it. So hence we went back to this bank, said, how about this, we take a step back and we not only connect your transaction system, we also connect your insurance systems. We not only connect your insurance system because the bank is also providing, we also connect your credit card. And when we brought these three sources together and we created a knowledge, for the lack of better words, a knowledge graph. And we also connected a bit of we call it a graph data model. And then we started asking the question, and we actually went to this and we actually connected one of the LLM models there and said, hey, dear, hey, Copilot, can you go to this database and show me tell me more about Suhail and what are the various offers based on the offer that I'm running that I can send to Suhail. I was so interactive, and their mind was like, they were like, wow, we did not know this is possible. So that basically shows you the power of connected data. Imagine the moment you bring the sources from various silos and create a single knowledge graph slash a kind of a connected data graph data platform. That gives you a immense power, and you are not only helping to operationalize certain models, you could leverage this in terms of fraud. Fraud is
Of
becoming a
course.
major challenge
Skip
today.
and trace.
100%. And one of the things that we are seeing in the industry is like adversaries are getting really smart. And again, I was talking to a bank the other day based out of India. They said one of the things that we are seeing today are the mule accounts, and those mule accounts are actually responsible for a lot of money laundering. And the best way and the easiest way to identify those mule accounts and reduce the false positives is when your transactions are connected to each other.
Absolutely.
Now what we are seeing is it's basically a traversal problem. So if I send money to you, you send it to someone else, and eventually you actually see a trace of these transactions, and eventually the money will come back to me,
Yeah.
which most of the relational databases they will be able to find it, but it'll be super complex and super
Yeah.
expensive in terms of the time and the efforts. So that's one of the things, and this is why connected, data platforms and the graph data platforms are becoming interestingly important. Yeah,
But tell me something, Sohail.
sure.
Given your vast experience in the spectrum of visibility that you have into industry, and given your very vast body of work, uh, so there's one concept called the connected data, which is what is the
Sure.
intelligent data. The other side of the spectrum has outcomes. Now, right in between is a user
Yeah.
who's trying to make. Increasingly, do you feel that such systems and solutions are going to become the norm that let you engage with the data in a more non-lateral manner and have more of a set of conversations to be able to help them build out the kind of outputs and outcomes that they want?
It has already become a norm,
It's
to be
already,
honest.
yeah.
It has already started. I remember that back in the days when I used to work with the analysts, it was like, hey, I've got this problem and I'm going to spend the next 14 days to make sense out of it.
So true.
Now, with the introduction of large language models,
Yeah.
that we have, you are now able to use these large language models to go to your data platforms as connected data and translate your English like requests, like, hey, show me some insights,
Yeah.
into a query or like a cipher or whatever you want to call it. And then the kind of output you see, sometimes even I get like, am I in the same dimension that I was like
Yeah.
10 years
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
5 years back, or am I in
Is
a
this the
different
same
dimension
planet?
altogether? The kind of questions and the kind of responses we see. And again, last year when we started looking at disconnected data, there was a lot of there's this term that we use. It's called hallucination. You go to an LLM model, you start asking questions, it thinks it's there, but it's not there. Now, the way people are stopping or kind of stopping that hallucination is they're actually building this connected knowledge graph and telling the LLM models that use this knowledge graph and use the context of this knowledge graph when you are responding back to me. Now, this is basically a step next, right?
Indeed,
Where
indeed.
you are now arguing with your own model.
Const-
Is this the correct information that I'm receiving?
Constantly
And
knocking
some
on it to see how good the wood is.
exactly, and every time, because your knowledge graph under the cover is so strong, it has all the context, it has all the data, and it is also connected with various attributes through some sort of a relationship. It could be an account number, it could be an address, it could be something else, and you end up getting lot less false positives and lot
Indeed.
more accurate results. That is something that I was like, even when I started working for Neo4j, I was like, man, this is something else.
No, I couldn't agree more, but that also brings me to a certain aspect of worry, which is what most CIOs or CXOs would tend to point out. Is that as we go into a very connected world, we are bringing in disparate and very diverse data sets from across and kind of embedding them into a mesh and a web.
Yes.
The corollary to all the brilliance that it does is, am I not that much more vulnerable in the face of adversity in terms of cyber threats, where everything is at risk at this scale all at the same time?
Which is true. That's why, I wanted to take a step back. And one of the things that we realized that it's very important, like, giving access to users across the data. You have to be very careful on what kind of level of access you're giving them.
Okay.
And some of the areas of opportunity for the CXOs, predominantly CISOs, is basically taking taking a 360-degree view of, if I'm giving access to your connected data to a user who might not need it and could potentially leverage it for something else, for insider trader or trading or something else.
Indeed,
I
indeed.
think it becomes very important that the RBACs, we go back to the basics of RBACs, back to the basics of ensuring that people they use the information that they are entitled to, not authorized to. So not only that, one of the things I was actually discussing this with the CISO, and this is where the connected data could also help you to kind of not really stop your data breaches, but kind of give you a 360-degree view of your entire IT ecosystem of where you could potentially have a data breach.
Indeed.
Some of the so I mean, if I go back to 2020, when everybody went on cloud, started deploying services of whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I come from the old world wherein we still have data centers, we still have three-tier
Yeah, yeah,
architecture, not many apps, not many, but we are talking about thousands, upwards of tens of thousands of services. Now, one of the use cases where the CXOs are using connected data is something like building a digital twin,
yeah,
a
absolutely.
digital twin of your entire ecosystem, and the outcomes or the value that they're seeing out of building these digital twins is immense. At times I've seen they go back and say, oh, I know I actually have this firewall somewhere, and which was created, let's say, 5 years back, and nobody is actually using it, and this firewall does not have any configuration.
Indeed.
Am I at a risk of being exposed, right? And with this, the moment you create this digital twin, so that was one. And second is, at times the IT teams will go back saying, I'm building this new application and I'm going to implement these changes in the next 2 weeks. Can I just go back, build a digital twin, and just wanted to go back in this digital twin framework when I want to see if I make a change in one attribute here, and that attribute could be a very basic firewall. I want to see the repercussions of that. You could actually do that on a digital twin platform without really having
Yes.
to implement the changes. So you see how these connected data platforms could potentially help you from being vulnerable at times and help you block those vulnerabilities in your IT landscape.
Couldn't agree more, but I do have a view on the clock, Sohail. I want to
Sure.
ask you a question that is going to kind of leverage your experience as not just a practitioner of technology, but also a solutions developer and a creator of technology. Is that when you see this whole concept of connected data, Suhail, how are you able to look into the future and articulate what it's truly going to do for organizations over the course of the next 24 to 36 months if you were to give them something that was binary in what could be measured in terms of outcomes?
That's again a very great question. So, one of the things that I see, I mean, this connected data is not driven by the concept of let me build a platform and then someone will come and use it. It
Indeed.
is predominantly built by identifying a problem statement. Like I said earlier, gone are the days when you just build a platform and someone will come and use it. So what we are seeing is this connected data. People have started to seeing a lot more value,
Of course.
lot more insights around their customer 360-degree profiles, digital twins, and fraud. In the next 18 to 36 months, I expect a lot more use cases around fraud in the banking industry.
Yeah, that's
I
that's something
expect a lot more operational efficiency when it comes to your IT landscape. Um, I expect a lot more use cases around, making your LLMs or your agentic AI applications more. The outcomes are more reasonable, less hallucination. I expect a lot more optimization in terms of the number of tokens that you use when you use these when you build the agentic AI framework. I expect a lot more optimization instead of just building the vector indexes and embeddings. I expect people to basically go back and overhaul that whole concept of vector and build in a knowledge graph right next to your agentic AI. And to be honest, last year, comparison between last year and this year, last year we saw a lot more failures in terms of
yeah.
agencies or the enterprises building the agentic AI framework. But this year, we are seeing a lot more success there.
All right.
People have realized that the art of possibility with the agentic AI framework, they are not. I mean, last year it was all about let's build it and we'll see how it
Yeah,
can be
yeah, yeah.
used. Today, what we are seeing is it's a very targeted approach. Hey, I'm going to build an HR specific agentic AI framework, and we are actually working with some of the industry leaders in India who are basically building an HR framework for 600,000 employees, and they're actually seeing more operational efficiency. People don't have to wait for HR or someone to come and answer their questions. It is so it's so seamless. I go to that portal, say, can I take a leave between this date and this date? Do I have leaves and do I need that? The whole process happens in within a few seconds. So you can actually see you're not waiting for someone to go and check their email and click the boxes.
I
So those
couldn't
are
agree
some
more.
of the leading indicators we in the next 18 to 36 months.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that was very supremely articulated as well. And I have just one last question for the times, because there's also something that's resonating in kind of everybody's mind, which is that, of course, connected, intelligent databases and intelligent connected data will certainly serve humanity for years to come, and it'll do some awesome stuff. But it's also important on the other side, what kind of data upskilling do you expect users to go through in order to be able to work with that level of complex and intermeshable data?
I think that's a very good question. To be honest, I'm kind of laughing at it because when I joined Neo4j, one of the things I did was, hey, do I need to learn a lot of
Indeed.
Cipher? Do I need to learn a lot? Then one of the guys who kind of works for me, he said, do you understand noun and verb? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
He said, that's connected
That's
data.
all you need.
That's basic. That's exactly what you need. That was like, I went back, I was talking to my wife. I said, hey, you know what? I'm now basically doing nouns and verbs.
That's pretty
So,
much.
so to answer your question, it's predominantly driven by what kind of relation. The moment you understand the relationship between the entities and the attributes, that's what you need. I'm not, to be honest. I don't think people need to worry about writing Cipher because with the introduction of the LLMs, 80% of your Cipher will be written by your LLM models. But where model might not be able to help you is to understand your business logic as an end user. Understand you should know your data dictionary. You should know what attributes means what, and how this attribute is linked to the other entity, the attribute or to the other entity, and how you can traverse from one entity all the way to 10 entities. That's what you need to know. It's more of becoming more familiar with your business
Indeed.
as compared to modeling something, writing a cipher. I feel that that's one takeaway that I have gotten from my team. Like, hey, noun and verbs.
No, no, I couldn't agree with you more because lots of people tend to make the mistake of not being able to see the woods from the trees, and I think that level of clarity and awareness about knowing your business and your enterprise and what you need first, rather than trying to spend time learning code and cipher. But Suhail Gulzar, it has been awesome speaking with you. I
It's been
personally
a
stand
pleasure.
very grateful. I've learned so much. Thank you for giving us time.
Thanks, Law. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that's Arjun Vishwanathan from Strategink signing off after a brilliant conversation with Suhail Gulzar from Neo4j. That's all from us in this particular edition, folks. See you.